Enerji üretim teknolojileri konulu paneli açmak üzere moderatör EÜH Genel Müdürü Doktor İzzet Alagöz'ü sahneye davet ediyorum. OSTİMTECH Üniversitesi'nden Profesör Doktor Serhan Dağtaş, MRV Corporation Başkanı Doktor Cornelia Meyer ve G2 Telemania Returning Power SRL Başkan Yardımcısı Zeyt Mahmut. Ekran verdi. Teşekkür ederim.
Mesafeyi koruduğumuza göre müsaadenizle masayı çıkartıyorum. Evet, öncelikle programa katılımcıları değil, dinleyicileri bir alkışlamak lazım. Böylesi bir dönemde, böylesi önemli bir konuyu yalnız bırakmadınız. Ben sizi ayakta alkışlıyorum, hoş geldiniz. Hocam ilk bana bahsettiğinde Türkiye'de enerji teknolojilerini konuşalım, sürdürülebilir ekonomiyi konuşalım. Bunları konuşalım ama bizim bir üniversite ortamında, akademisyenlerin olduğu bir yerde konuşmamız gereken, söylememiz gereken bir şeyler var. Bunu atlamayalım. Dedik ki biz Avrupa'nın en büyük elektrik üreticileri ve en büyük enerji tüketicisi ülkeler sıralamasında 3. ile 4. arasında gidip geliyoruz. Ancak Türkiye'nin 93.000 megawata varan elektrik üretim kapasitesinde yerli üretim ve elektrik üretim teknolojileriyle ilgili katkılarımız ne oranda? Bunu konuştuğumuz zaman başımız önümüze geliyor. Bir mühendis olarak ben almış olduğumuz eğitimi inkar ettiğimizi düşünüyorum. Ve kendimi açıkçası çok tatmin edemiyorum, mutlu olamıyorum. Kendimi kandıracak cümleler kurmak istiyorum. Ama şarkıda söylediği gibi saçma sapan cümleler kurmaya başlıyorum. O zaman başımızı önümüze alıp düşünmemiz gereken bir noktadayız. Nedir bu? Elektrik üretim teknolojilerinde dünyada söz sahibi bir ülkeyiz. Elektrik üretiminde dünyada söz sahibi ülkeyiz. Teknolojide tek bir sesimiz çıkıyor. Bakın benim yönettiğim şirkette, elektrik üretim AŞ'de 64 tane santralimiz var. 64 santralin 48 tanesi hidroelektrik santral. Hidroelektrik santrallerin hiçbirisinin jeneratörünü biz üretmemişiz. Hiçbirisinin türbünü biz üretmemişiz. Hiçbirisinin kontrol sistemini biz üretmemişiz. Kamuda böyleyken özelde nasıl? Çok farklı bir durum yok. Özelde de bir an önce yatırımın geri dönüşümü için gayret gösteren yatırımcılar en hızlı nereden temin edebileceklerse oradan alıyorlar. Yani yerli üretim teknolojileri kimsenin umurunda değil. Ama bizim umurumuzda olması lazım. Biz dünyaya baş kaldıran bir ülkeyiz. Genlerimizden gelen dünyanın en güçlü ülkelerinden birisi olma güdüsü bizim kaderimiz. Bunu değiştiremiyoruz. Eğer öyleyse mühendislikte de bunu yapmamız gerekir. Sadece savunma sanayinde başarılı olmakla övünemeyiz. Bizim elektrik üretim teknolojilerinde primer ve sekonder kaynaklarda da söz sahibi olmamız gerekir. Primer kaynaklarımız neler? Önce ülkedeki yerli üretim kaynaklarına baktığımız zaman doğal kaynaklarımız, yenilenebilir kaynaklar, rüzgar, güneş, hidroelektrik, su potansiyelimiz. Arkasından Türkiye'deki var olan milli kaynaklarımızdan lignit kömürler. Ne yazık ki lignit kömür diyoruz. Kömür varlığımızın durumu bu. Lignit kömüre dayalı bir üretim teknolojisi geliştirmemiz gerekiyor. Kömürün iyileştirilmesi gerekiyor. Malum kömür yakma dünyada da üzerinde çok konuşulan, çok tartışılan ve çok arka çalışması yapılan bir alan. Ben bütün bu alanlarda neler yaptığımızı anlatmaya kalksam herhalde bir iki süreyi doldururum. Rektörüm de bana ters bakar oradan. Biz sana optimize edeceksin, süreyi iyi kullanacaksın dedi. Sen ne yaptın der. O yüzden bunu başka bir toplantıya bırakıyorum ama Değerlendirmemiz gereken birkaç nokta var. Nedir? Primer enerji kaynaklarımızdan ülkemizin milli kaynağı olan kömürün iyileştirilmesi ve kullanılır hale getirilmesiyle ilgili verimliliğin artırılmasıyla ilgili çalışmaları incelememiz gerekiyor. Bu bir. İkincisi, kesinlikle ve kesinlikle enerji verimliliğini her alanda, tüketimde de, üretimde de arttırmamız gerekiyor. Verimlilik, lambayı lüzumsuzsa söndür değildir arkadaşlar. Verimlilik, aynı konfordaki tüketimi daha az enerji harcayarak yapmaktır. Dolayısıyla enerji verimliliği teknolojilerle de geliştirilmemiz gerekiyor. Bu alanda çok ciddi katkıda bulunmamız gerekiyor. En milli kaynaklardan bir tanesi de enerji verimliliği. Üçüncü olarak enerji üretim teknolojilerine ve de bunun sürdürülebilirliğine yönelmemiz gerekiyor. Bir lider ülke olarak mühendislikte de söz sahibi olmamız gerekir. O yüzden bugünkü toplantımızda sürdürülebilir enerji ekonomisinin primer enerji kaynaklarımızdan en önemlilerinden birisi olan kömürü ve de enerji iletim alternatiflerini konuşmak istiyoruz. Ama bunu çok kısa bir süre içerisinde gerçekleştireceğiz ve OSTİM Üniversitesi bu konularla niye ilgileniyor? OSTİM ilgileniyor da EİGAŞ'la ne işi var? Biz niye buradayız? Çünkü bizim OSTİM Üniversitesi ile birlikte yürüttüğümüz çok ciddi bir proje var. Biz ülkemizin milli kaynağı olan Afşin Elbistan lignitleriyle ilgili bir araştırma çalışması yapıyoruz ve bunu da üniversiteyle birlikte yapıyoruz. Bu konuda ciddi katkıları olan, başından beri çok büyük destekler olan Sayın Rektörümüze de huzurunuzda teşekkürlerimi iletiyorum. Benim ülkemin bu teknolojilere ihtiyacı var. Üniversitelerin de bunları araştırmaya ihtiyacı var. Bu ikisini birleştirdik. Hem kömürü konuşmak istiyoruz. Üniversite olarak temiz teknolojilerle ilgili neler yapıyoruz? Bunları konuşmak istiyoruz. Ve bu konuda da üniversitemiz adına temiz üretim teknolojileriyle ilgili genel bir değerlendirme yapması için Sayın Hocam Serhan Bey'e dönüyorum ve mikrofonu da sözde size bırakıyorum. Buyurun hocam.
Good morning, everybody. And thank you, Dr. Alagos, for the very insightful introduction here. I know we have a lot of international visitors or listeners remotely here, so we're going to continue this session in English. And I'm going to make a very brief overview of what we are doing at OSTİMTECH in this very important area. My name is Serhan Daftaş, as you can see on the slide. I'm a joint professor here at OSTİMTECH, and among many other things, we have also been involved with the study of clean power technologies and their applications here in the country. So my short presentation is going to be an introduction and overview of this. Just a brief outlook. All right, just a brief outlook of the past year of what the situation looks like here in the country, in Turkey. We rely on coal as our primary hydrocarbon source of energy in power production. Natural gas still makes a big part of the equation. The hydro production should ideally be increased. So the renewables that consists of hydro, wind, and solar and others make up about 30%. Of course, just like the rest of the world, the trends for the renewables will increase in the coming years. But the situation in Turkey dictates that we will need to rely on the domestic coal sources as a primary source of energy in the power area in the coming 2 or 3 decades. So that brings us to the question of how to make best use of the coal resources. And the clean coal idea is a subject of much controversy in the world and in the US and other countries too, as our moderator has also indicated. So we are basically in this study looking at the idea of the clean coal from a number of challenges that are present in the country to basically make a better and more efficient use of this vast source of energy in the country. So the primary challenges here, as it may be the case in many other places, including in some case studies we have seen in the US, it's the poor coal quality. Our lignite sources are vast, but the quality is low in several dimensions. The high moisture rate and the lower, of course, energy value, and some of the non-useful content being high, like ash, sulfur, etc. In addition to that, the efficiency challenges, we also have emission issues, which has been a very popular issue in the past year or so. Earlier in the year, some of the plants were shut down for understandable reasons, because they didn't meet the emission guidelines imposed by the international community. So we have 2 basic issues here, which cannot be addressed by the traditional FGD solutions, which are based on filtering and some other techniques. So our conclusion from a more maybe scientific perspective is you cannot be clean, so coal cannot be clean without being efficient. So you need to address both these issues at the same time. That was the primary point of our study and our basic perspective in this area. So we looked at different options, and you need to address these basic questions before you can actually talk about clean coal technology. So one of these angles is coal beneficiation, basically increasing or improving the quality of coal for power production purposes, and there are different techniques used for this purpose. And for efficiency reasons, you need to use waste heat speed, for example. Some of our plants, their inefficiency stems from the fact that they use useful heat, not waste heat for drying purposes. Obviously, when you have high moisture content, you need to address that by drying. But how you do that makes a big difference. And that was one of the considerations that actually made us take a look at some successful case studies, one of which is shown here in the slide. This is a power plant in North America, in North Dakota, to be more specific, in the United States. So we did actually pay a visit to this station. They had very similar problems in terms of their lignite content, high moisture rate, high ash, and relatively lower calorific value. So one technique that they employed here appeared to be suitable for consideration to our lignite sources. So there's some characteristics here. It's a power plant very similar to some of the major plants we have here in Turkey. About the same age, built in the 70s. And they have a high moisture rate and other impurity issues. So the techniques that they employ at this station results in higher efficiency, better emissions by using segregation and efficient drying techniques. That was the basic idea. I'm not getting into the details, but in this study, in the past 6 months or so, we have been looking at some of these characteristics and techniques and to see how they can be applied to some of our plants of similar size here in Turkey. So some of the effects of less moisture, this is about burning coal more efficiently. So you may have seen this when you're doing barbecues and grills. When your fuel burns better, you get a lot less fumes and or smoke or other harmful things. So the same idea is the less moisture and better segregation results in more efficient burning, and then you get much better efficiency from your plant, and more importantly, better emissions, which help you meet the international guidelines in this important area. So some of these are the gases that you're trying to reduce in your power plants, and what makes clean coal clean is dropping the levels of these harmful gases below acceptable levels, which is a big challenge in most of the plants around the world. And this is the potential economic value that you can generate. So all this has a cost, obviously, and any new technology will bring some investment costs. So you need to be able to get this back in a reasonable way. And so some of the sources of efficient clean coal technologies and the savings that you can achieve using these technologies are listed here. This is the distribution. So you're not only using less fuel, your maintenance costs can go down. And of course, the direct and indirect effects of high emissions and harmful gases will also be very important long-term benefits. So we won't get into the detail again. Just to summarize again, just to give you a wider perspective, in this study, we looked at several coal-based plants and also coal fields that have not been developed yet. That's what greenfield plant basically means. There's no plant yet, but we still have capacity up to 15 gigawatts in our projections for newly developed plants here in Turkey. Turkey is one of the very few countries in the world with this potential, but it's still feasible economic value. Many countries, as you may know, are basically pulling away from clean coal or coal-based technologies, which may present an opportunity for us too. But whether it's existing plants, which amount to about 7 gigawatts or more, we are only counting the major plants here in this equation, or the newly developed or greenfield plants. Technologies similar to what I just described can be applied to several major plants or the new developments, and can potentially save the country billions of dollars in terms of reduced fuel usage, reduced dependence on foreign energy sources. So, in terms of what we did, is we collected some samples from the coal fields, the domestic sources, shipped them out to pilot plants for testing purposes. So these are the testing steps that we carried out. The idea is to fluidize the source so you can increase the efficiency of the plant, see if you can achieve efficient drying, segregation to separate coal from other material, and other analyses that you can perform. So just to summarize our findings, we won't get into the details of those again. Our conclusion from what we have seen so far has been quite positive. in terms of segregation and efficient drying, especially in fluidization area. Our coal, most of our lignite sources are suitable for clean coal technologies similar to that. And so we're looking forward to publishing a report very soon, which will be made public for more information. And of course, for any questions or any other matters, we're always here to answer questions. The other aspect of this project is to facilitate the technologies, as Dr. Alagöz has mentioned. We are not only importing a lot of raw material in the case of energy, we are also importing energy technologies in all of these areas. It's estimated between $25 and $35 million a year. One of our goals from OSTİMTECH's perspective here is to develop technologies and to develop national technologies so we can address some of these modernization and efficiency as well as the emission related projects here with our technical team, both with all the companies in the OSTİM area and the rest of the national industry sector. That is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. I have to make an excuse because just because of presentation was in Turkish, I continued my speech in Turkish, but my rector warned me that we have to make it in English. There are some participants who doesn't speak Turkish for this, and I switched into English. Okay, thank you very much. It was just an introduction for the clean technologies, and we have to study on these clean technologies more. So this is just an opening, let's accept like this. And I hope the other connections are ready, if you confirm. So next speech will be Mr. David Zeitman, and he is going to make a speech about energy security and developing in the developing countries and developed countries. So how can we sustain the energy development in the country? So we are listening to you. Welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Alagöz,
We don't hear.
that introduction.
We don't hear. No sound. Ses yok.
Hello, testing.
Very nice speech, but unfortunately we don't hear.
Yes.
Okay, just a moment. Just some seconds.
Okay.
We are on the way.
You hear me now? Hello.
Technology can fail from time to time.
Mr. David, can you talk?
Yes.
You can talk?
I can talk. Can you hear me?
Calling from space.
I can hear
Hello?
you,
Can you hear me now?
but I don't
Okay,
know whether the others
that's
can hear you. I'm sitting in Switzerland hearing you.
Yeah. So.
Yeah,
I
and I can
we
hear
them
you. So
clearly,
we foreigners can communicate.
Yes, hello. Okay, I think we're on.
Inshallah.
Yeah.
So, if we are going to talk about sustainable energy and sustainable economy, we have to assure sustainable technology.
Yes, we need some audio.
Sustainable audio.
Sustainable audio, there you go.
Birkaç dakika öyle istiyor. Yapabilir miyiz? Ne yapalım? Veya biz konuşarak bu arayı doldurabiliriz.
Şu anlatalım.
Gitmek çalışsınlar.
Ama İngilizce yok.
Bir mesaj verelim. Birkaç dakika ihtiyacımız var. Ondan sonra biz kendi aramızda konuşalım.
Our technicians are working, so we need some minutes. Sorry for this interruption. But by the way, we are going to talk about the Turkish energy market nowadays. So in order to make these minutes useful. I don't know if you are following nowadays the energy consumption in Turkey, demand and the production rate. Per year, we are measuring every day's energy production and, of course, demand at the same time, and record the yearly recording days. And in September, we have very interesting rates. Nearly all days of September this year, in 2020, we have less 20 years records nearly every day. And for 2020, in 3rd of September, we had the maximum rate of demand in Turkey, and we reached to 51,000 megawatt. Even though the installed base in Turkey are 93,000 megawatt, this is all-time record of Turkey. So what does it mean? We have to extract some results out of this. What does it mean? It means exactly the demand are increasing. That means industry are increasing. So we have to prepare ourselves for next year's upcoming winter. It's not a big success to guess about that. Upcoming winter will be a very hard winter, very high demand, and very high energy production. So we will see our reports. I think, okay, when we are talking about reports, connections are done. Are you okay? Just one sound. Let's see. Can you hear us?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear us?
Unfortunately, we can see you very well. Sorry for this inconvenience, but your look is perfect, and we can understand the energy sustainability in your countries. So, unfortunately, we cannot hear you yet.
Arka taraftalar çalışıyorlar genelde.
Oh, the joys of technology.
Ama şimdi tekrar şey olmuş, kesinlikle olmuş.
Alright. Serhan Hocam, size kısa konuşayım dedik. Şimdi uzatalım o zaman. Ben bir soru sorayım. So, before the conference, I told please don't make your speech long, make it shorter because we want to hear Cornelia and Arthur. So, David, for this reason, we made a long speech, very short. Now I have to ask a question about the clean technologies of the coal. I saw a very similar coal sample, a case study in South Dakota, if I understand right. So can you compare the coal quality? The medium quality of Turkey is about 1,000, between 1,000 and 2,000 kilocalories. And high humidity, high ash, high sulfur content. So, is there any similarities between these core primary energy source, or if there are any more differences, how can we measure our success in our studies? Ben alttan tutuyorum. Şeması azaltan.
Thank you. Yeah, but the issue of the similarity between the two types of coal was one of the primary starting points for us to choose that case study in our evaluation of that particular technology. There were similarities, a few differences too. The key differences perhaps is in the calorific value. And the calorific value in the US case was a bit higher. But their issue, the reason that they developed and employed this particular technology was not about the calorific value in particular, but rather the higher moisture content, and of course the existence of impurities, the need for segregation in the coal. So in terms of those key issues, the coal types are very similar. Along with the high moisture rate, of course, they were about 38%. In our case, in some situations, the water content can be over 50% in our coal. Our model is that it's not just the calorific value, but there are other issues. So the coal quality needs to be significantly improved. And that poses a major challenge. On the opportunity side, we have also a vast amount of resources, a lot of coal that still needs to be tapped. But a major obstacle has been the deployment of clean coal technologies in an economically and technically feasible way. That's one of the major goals and possible outcomes in our study, to prove the feasibility of the clean coal technologies to low quality coal that we have a lot of, similar to the types of lignite sources in the US. And the North Dakota case was very similar. And we actually confirmed this when we last year. And they have very similar problems, and they have to come up with this software technology. The next step now is to see how the study how the scale can be scaled up.
Buradaki hoparlörü değiştirecek olabilirsiniz. Hoparlör bilgisayarın hoparlörü gözüküyor ya, speaker. Yok onun bağlantısı acaba şey mi?
Hocam ekranınıza yansıyor ya, ekranı ben dondurayım mı şuradayken? Değil. Slide'dayken. Yaptığınızda şey şu an ekrana yansıyor.
Mikrofon, kendi mikrofonları ama speaker deyince.
Hello?
Kornelia'nın sesi mi?
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you at the end.
Fantastic, great.
Can you continue talking, please?
I can continue talking. What would you like me to? I'm talking today about energy transition, energy security, technology, and job creation, the nexus between the three of them. So was this good in terms of level?
Okay, so can I ask you to continue with your speech, because this connection is perfect now and we can hear you in the room.
Okay, fantastic.
Yes, we would like to hear you about the nexus of the energy transition. Please go, hear you.
Okay, hello. I am speaking hello to everybody. I wished I could be with you in Turkey. I have Turkey behind me, as you can see on that beautiful picture there that I once got from Murat Bey. Now, we're talking about the nexus of energy transition, energy security, technology, and job creation. And I would like to look, I'm taking more of a macro approach. And because I wasn't aware until yesterday what format this would take, and because as we all see, the technology is always difficult. I didn't do slides, so as not to insert another element of difficulty. So I'm talking globally about emerging markets or the developing world, and I will first splitting it off between the oil and gas producers and the rest of them who don't produce oil and gas. For the oil producers, it's very important to get access to technology in terms of technology transfer, especially from the oil field service companies, because it allows them to create an industry, and in some cases even a cluster of industry, of world-class industries that will help them create jobs, and it will bring their technology forward. You know, whether you need drivers, you need pumps, and you need drivers, for instance, in pipelines. So if somebody shows me how to do a world-class pump, I can use that pump for other things. It has other applications, water, whatnot. So if you get access to the technology of the oil field service companies, you have things that will help you way beyond that sector and can be cross-fertilized into other industrial sectors. And obviously it creates jobs. There's some good examples. For instance, Schlumberger tends to localize supply chain quite a bit. They, for instance, have a state-of-the-art pump company in Siberia, in Russia, of all places. And other of the oil field service companies do that too. So I think at the country level, the governments should really insist when they let the big oil companies in and when they let the oil field service companies in, if you want to get access to the production sharing agreement or to the concession, we need technology as well. Then the other thing is energy transition. Energy transition is happening, and there's going to be many dollars behind it. So what's important for the oil producing guys is that they understand where energy transition is going, because that will have a direct impact on the demand for oil and gas. And that will have a direct impact on their earnings potential and, you know, the revenues for the government. And again, here also, they need to make sure they're not losing out on the technology for these things, especially if you look at you know, the newer technologies in renewables and so on. These countries need access to the technology and be able to integrate it just as much as they can. I'm now talking about a country that's not a developing country, that's a major oil producer, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. With Vision 2030, they make absolutely sure that they're in the front row of that technology development. So is the UAE. You know, look at Masdar City. They have been looking at this thing, the world beyond oil. So they need to do that. Now we're talking about all emerging markets, all developing economies, whether also the ones who are not producing oil and gas. energy transition is happening, and they need to be part of that while still using their, using their coal. I was very encouraged hearing about clean coal from a previous speaker. That's very important. It's important to have the access to that technology. But while still going on the hydrocarbons, and the conventional energy production, they do need to be part of that also, because there's a lot of funding behind it. When you look at what the EU is pumping into it with their Green Deal, and if there's a Biden administration, what the US will be pumping into these new technologies, into green energy, emerging markets and developing economies need to make sure they're part of that funding stream, and they're getting access to the technology, so the rich guys don't just keep the technologies for themselves. And that the rich guys are the West, and there's also China. So that sort of energy transition is important. The access to technology is incredibly important. If I look at also at energy transition, if I look at renewables, especially for countries which don't have a very reliable grid, solar and wind applications can be good off-grid applications. I look, for instance, at Nigeria, which is really not where it should be in grid. So somewhere in, up north, although they're a major oil and gas producer, some of the renewables technology might be very useful, and in countries like Indonesia, Philippines, if you have island nations, it's hard to do a grid across islands. Again, like with the other countries, it's really, really important to be part of that technology transfer. It's important to localize some supply chains, to become best in class. So you might even export. I have another example, which does not come from the energy sector, but from the aeronautics sector. You look at Tunisia. Tunisia has been able to create a cluster of excellence where they bring a lot of the very important parts into the Boeings and the Airbuses. So developing countries need to have the vision to jump on that train to get the funding. The World Bank will be only too happy to fund it, and the regional development banks, and jump on that cluster. Then we need to look at energy security. While we're all getting so excited about energy transition, we need to make sure that there is energy security, and that we have the technology in place also in our grids and wherever it's needed to ensure energy security, because the economic cost of load shedding or blackouts or brownouts, depending where you are, is amazing. Let's just look at a very good example here is the Lebanon, because with the whole economic breakdown of the Lebanon, you sometimes have as many as 20 hours no electricity, where you can't run any factory. You can't, for instance, also put in other things like call centers. It's something very good that emerging economies can do. Philippines, same thing. If you have load shedding, well, you know what? Your call centers go down, and you know what? Amex will go somewhere else for the call center. So this energy security bit is very important, but I know that the next speaker will talk about that. And again, what's really important is really one of the key issues for developing economies is many of them have a youth bulge. They have many young people. So you need to ensure in every aspect of economic activity, especially in energy, it fosters job growth, which is why technology transfer, integration into the supply chain is so important, so you can create those jobs. So to sum it all up, while still use the existing infrastructure. If you have good coal-fired power plants, by all means use them. Use the technology to turn them into greener plants, but also take advantage of the funding and the opportunities that are there for the energy transition. It's not either or; it's both. Without, you don't need to drink the Kool-Aid of energy transition, which is currently very prevalent, if I could say it, in Europe. But whatever you do, make sure to get access to the technology, get technology transfer, integrate in the supply chain, and create those jobs that we all need. That's it.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me now?
Can you hear me?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Cornelia, first of all, next meeting, I hope to see you in Turkey here. And
oh, inshallah, that would be wonderful. As I said, I have Turkey behind me there.
I tried to see, but I couldn't see. But hopefully, and I pray for that. Next time you will come here and we will see each other. All right. Now
Here.
better.
Turkey.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much. Next time we will have more pictures together.
Excellent.
So our rector was in the picture. I saw him in the picture. Is that right?
No, he's not in the picture. It's a picture of old Istanbul.
Old Istanbul.
Yeah, it's a picture of old Istanbul and a beautiful plate. It's hand painted. I was given it from your rector.
Good. And the blackout is the latest thing to see in our country. So, as you gave very many countries and many interesting examples, we have to take all precautions and protect ourselves from this blackout. Hopefully, we will never see it. And, okay, we tried 2 times, and it is your turn, so David, and we can hear you. Please don't miss this chance.
I will do. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Alexander. Thank you, Dr. Meyer.
We would like to hear sustainability from yourself. Please hear you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that introduction, Dr. Alagos. The topic here is energy security for socioeconomic and environmental sustainability in Turkey. Basically, the overall discussion is converting the poor indigenous quality fuels to black gold implementing a clean coal technology initiative. One key concern of policymakers should be to ensure energy security in the country. Worldwide, the share of net electricity generation growth over the next 30 years is fueled by renewables and natural gas. Obviously, the success of energy security surrounding renewables is dependent on whether the water flows, the wind blows, and the sun shines, obviously. With relation to natural gas, is the host country a net importer or a net producer of natural gas? This brief study reveals energy insecurity is damaging for both the environment and socioeconomic conditions, with specific focus on how indigenous in-country, specifically in-country lignite and a clean coal technology initiative can provide a sustainable energy strategy and energy security. Over the next 30 years, coal production, mining, and consumption are projected to remain near current levels in the reference cases presented here. So we have the leader, as you can see, is China, India. Turkey is amongst the others within the OECD European regions. The other OECD larger bases are actually in Australia. And one of the key energy security measures with relation to coal utilization can be extended into many OECD marketplaces still that are ones that are remaining that make use of coal. Specifically, we have Germany, Poland, and Romania. Turkey can improve its energy strategy and its energy security through year 2050 and beyond through utilization of up to 15 billion tons of proven indigenous lignite reserves. The The case of Turkey is interesting in the sense that with the growing age of the country, the increasing reliance on imported sources of energy is resulting in huge demand-supply gap, which is evident in the suppressed demand for electricity. Mm-hmm. This has social, economic, and environmental consequences, obviously. Most of the countries in the world have shifted their focus from imported fuels to indigenous resources. Turkey specifically is rich in lignite reserves, which are cheap and will provide competitiveness. As we can see here, coal currently is an energy security risk. If we look at it as a portion of the entire fuels of consumption within Turkey, as 45% of the coal is actually imported. Natural gas is another security risk where currently we have 100% imports. Obviously, there is a find in the Black Sea, so they'll be able to tap into that, and that'll obviously reduce the energy risk further within Turkey. Obviously, we have renewables and a small portion, roughly around a quarter of the entire net electricity generation produced. So there we do have a security blanket safeguard. Unfortunately, oil is yet another energy security risk, with 90% of oil being as import. So with the exception of lignite coal, Turkey has no significant wealth in terms of fossil fuels and thus relies on imports to meet 3/4 of its total primary energy consumption. So additional challenges to Turkey's energy strategy is coal pollution health costs. Just from actual coal power plants, the health costs are relatively high, as you can see here, 19 billion Turkish liras, 23 billion Turkish liras per year. Population obviously has a desire for cleaner environment and lower cost electricity. Energy supply security risks. A majority of electricity produced from energy fuel supply imports. Coal-fired power plant operators lack incentive capital to align with environmental regulatory laws. And the lack of conventional emission control systems, they lack financing because banks just will not allow them to finance it because there is no return on investment using conventional emission control systems. So how do we go about improving the energy strategy and energy security in Turkey? We'd like to introduce what's the Clean Coal Technology Initiative, which in essence is basically a commercially viable technology already operating well over 11 years in the United States. The premise is that it uses the waste heat of the power plant to actually increase the caloric value of the coal on one side, reduce the contaminants before entry to the boiler, thereby reducing emissions by up to 40% in CO2 cases, which is primarily a key interest in the EU, by 5 to 10%. Overall increase the plant's efficiency by 5 to 10%. And overall, we're looking at an overall reduction of coal volume into the power plant of 5 to 10% as well, which results in higher plant availability. So in summary here, we're discussing basically a Clean Coal Technology Initiative project, which has been operational in the US since 2009, providing that plants of 95% availability year in and year out for the last 11 years. US Department of Energy sponsored. These are the key attributes: overall improved efficiencies, fuel consumption savings, auxiliary power usage savings, FGD savings from lime usage, water usage savings, overall maintenance and operation savings, and most important to the operators and to the government is obviously also having a return on investment, which is unheard of in conventional emissions control systems. So the benefits from a clean coal technology is reduction on the actual coal pollution health costs. So we're estimating, just based on 9,000 megawatts, if this clean coal initiative was installed at roughly 9,000 megawatts, the health cost savings would be between 3 billion to 4 billion Turkish liras a year. The population would thereby realize a cleaner environment and a more sustainable, lower cost electricity. Energy supply security would be substantially improved. Coal power plants' interest and appetite to pursue these type of investments, giving the return on investment and alignment with emissions reduction, would be favorable to all parties. Financing would be available for these clean coal technologies. One source is US Exim Bank. So, in summary, basically, the study reveals that energy security is damaging for the environment and socioeconomic conditions. But with the energy clean coal technology initiative, energy security safeguards by increasing the actual indigenous coal consumption using the actual clean coal technology will improve the energy security for coal. It would limit the energy security from natural gas by increasing the actual coal consumption within the country. Obviously, further investments in renewables will increase over the years. We're providing that additional security safeguard. And again, you would have limited energy security risk from your oil consumptions, because as a mix, you would have your renewables and as well as your indigenous coal through the Clean Coal Technology Initiative, improving your energy security overall. So the study suggests policymakers set priority focus and move towards a long-term energy security outlook, and thereby realize environmental and socioeconomic sustainability in the country through minimizing reliance on imported energy, and promote energy efficiency through environmental controls, utilizing indigenous resources specifically, but not limited to indigenous resources like lignite, through implementation of a clean coal technology initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zaytman. In fact, as a policymaker of the energy in Turkey, it was a fruitful introduction, but we have to discuss about some figures, especially related to the oil. The production of electric from oil is quite invisible, but absolutely we are using energy for other in vehicles and in the industry. We use oil, but not for the electric production, electric generation. Anyway, this will be a guide for the next policies. In fact, I thought you are making some view from the exact strategy of the next near future of Turkish electric market. It was for me very interesting and very surprising that you both are so aware of Turkish electricity market, and I appreciate. And now it's time to have some questions if you have from the room. Any questions? Okay, we got notes and yes.
Just I wanted to see if for David's company, is this the first time they are testing it out outside the US?
Please.
Hi, David. As the General Director has said in the introduction, this cooperation between your company and us in developing this technology for Turkey, I just wanted to remind myself if you have tested this technology out of the US before. Maybe I missed that part.
Did you get the question?
Sure, I can address that. The technology is only implemented in the U.S. at this point. We haven't had the opportunity yet to develop it outside of the U.S. Although it is operational there 11 years. Basically, and the reason surrounding that is it's a not-for-profit cooperative that's operating and owns the technology, and their interest is surrounding delivering to their community of 1.5 million population, and therefore they had no original interests, and therefore our company came in about 2.5 years ago and said, you have an amazing disruptive technology that should be introduced to the entire world and not just left in one power plant in the U.S.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead, please.
My question to you is, that's all very good. I mean, that's one part of the, it's one part of for energy security. You need not just coal, you need the whole bandwidth, as we all know. But coming back to the technology, how easily available is it? If it's very protected by IP, if it takes people to want to share it, for it to be accessible to other countries, and what would be the terms of such a sharing? Because if it gets too expensive, clearly it's not affordable. So have you been thinking of the modality of how it could be shared with other countries?
Sure. So basically, the actual technology is available to be shared. What it doesn't revolve around is actually conducting first a field study to assess the viability. Each coal obviously has its own traits and quality issues, and therefore we assess what the return on investment is, as compared to also environmental impact, energy efficiency impact. So it's very distinct and specific to each individual power plant, because each power plant has obviously their own makeup as well. So it's a power plant, the quality have to be pre-assessed.
Would there be the technical assistances also available for countries like Turkey or other countries, Burma, other countries who are looking at who are using coal? Would there be the technical assistances available to conduct these studies in those countries? Because funding is always the issue, isn't it?
Sure, absolutely. So the tests are relatively at the responsibility of the operator to fund it, because it is expensive. I mean, we're talking, roughly, if you look at it overall in the government level, it's not expensive, but it's still around $200,000 US on average to conduct a field study, which takes about, 6 months on average. Okay, so it involves actually taking almost 20 tons of coal and shipping it to the U.S. at 2 sites to test the viability of the system, walk-downs at the power plant, reverse trade missions to the U.S. So it's not a standard, off-the-shelf that, plug and play. It does involve some engineering assessment, but we are successful thus far. I mean, Turkey is one that we are coming within the next week or two. We should have a full assessment on the actual what was conducted currently in Turkey. So yeah, from that standpoint, it is possible. It's not a high cost if you look at the actual savings, specifically compared to the alternative using conventional emissions control, which has ammonia and could deteriorate and cause a catastrophic effect if posed.
It's not a high cost if you are the US. It may be affordable also for Turkey. It's a high cost if you're an LLDC, a very, very poor country, and that's where you need funding help.
Yes, without a doubt, But there is funding specifically. I mean, it's low cost interest loan from U.S. Exim Bank, And
Okay.
and the EBRD is even still interested because this is a technology that would reduce the emission control, okay? But again, the cycle going through EBRD, as you well know, could be a 2-year cycle. So by the time you even start to flush this, you're not going to get there. You know, it could take 2 years of discussions before. Yeah.
You need to go to the Asian Development Bank. I used to work for them. They're much faster.
There you go. Okay.
So, Ms. Cornelia, continue to follow us. Once we complete this, there will be more connections. Now, as I said, it's an initiation. So we initiate it. So don't miss to follow us. You will have more opportunities. Now we have one more question, and I hope this will be the last question of Mr. Yurek here.
So look, I am overusing my hosting status here to ask another question, but very short. This is to Cornelia Meyer, who is a very well-known expert really on energy issues other than finance. And normally we are free-riding her time here because she speaks all the time at the BBC. And now she's not charging us anymore, so we will use her expertise. Very short question based on what David has said at the end of his previous intervention. So, for renewables or clean technologies to be more prevailing in the way forward, how much do we need of disruptive technologies? Can we go on like this, or do we need more and more disruptive technologies so that things are more feasible and more sustainable?
Is that to me?
Almamız gerekiyor. Veya bir şey de olur.
To whom are you asking the question?
Cornel, bu da çalışmamayı tercih etti.
Hello, are you asking the question of me?
Yes. Exactly.
Okay, excellent. Now, I think there's two things to bear in mind. The first thing is, which I always call, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Use your existing energy system for the reasons of energy security. Because if you're putting too many new things on too quickly, then the problem, let's say, of a grid failure becomes higher. And if you have a grid failure, that has huge economic ramifications. At the same time, make sure you're at the top of the cusp of the curve for the new technologies. And there I would work with the US, I would work with China, and I know this is currently a bit difficult, but I would also work with the UAE because they're coming up with some very nifty technologies. I would work with the technology leaders and with the companies who come and say, we want to give you the niftiest, nicest new solar plant, and say, okay, we need to understand the technology and be able to get as much of the technology as you can get. But you have mentioned something very important, because these are new technologies. There's always the danger of something happening and then something new happening, and what you have being no longer valid. But I think the key is for universities like yours and for other universities to have the brightest minds really study what is happening, and then adding that on to your electricity system, to your other energy systems as come, because there are the environmental concerns, and I think a country like Turkey cannot afford to lose out on technologies, be it on clean coal, be it on the latest, bestest gas power plant, be it on solar, wind, and other renewables and their applications. So I think that the key is to have research centers, universities, your great conglomerates. You have great Turkish conglomerates, Koç, whatnot. You know, you've really great Sabancı, great Turkish conglomerates. Have those people work together and work with their counterparts. Don't just look west. I mean, there is Europe, there is the US, but also look east, look to China, look to other countries, India, because what is happening with this increasingly interconnected world is technology is no longer just the prerogative of the rich countries. Some of the emerging economies are coming up with some pretty good ideas too. So that the key is to really stay atop of the new technologies, be able to get the technology transfer, be able to manufacture as well. So if you go for big solar installations, make sure you don't just import the solar panels from China or wherever. Make sure you can manufacture some in the country as well, because you have a lot of people who need jobs. Nexus, and make sure you are at the forefront of that.
Okay, I would like to thank you for this very beautiful speeches and your existence in this conference. But I have to excuse because of our voice connection failure. As I understood from this session, so we have to continue to be in touch, and we have to continue to discuss about what is next. So even though we got a failure in connection, please be connected, and thank you very much for joining. Thank you very much for listening to us.
Thank you very much.
Moderatörümüz ve katılımcıların sayesinde tamamladık. Şimdi ilgili takdim etmek üzere OSTİMTECH Üniversitesi Kredi Başkanımız Orhan Ay.
Böyle geçiyoruz da resim alıyorsunuz.
Geldiği şeyden bahsettiniz ya, üretimden.
İmalat, ticaret, sanayi politikası. Ben doğru yerde bahsettiğimden eminim canım. Burası OSTİM.
Evet. Artık boş zamanınızda inşallah okursunuz.
Peki. Sizler adına da alıyoruz. Bunu da söyleyeyim. Mikrofon olmadığı için Türkçe söyledim. Kim tercüme edecek?
Siz onların
Okay. So they told me that we have to share this. So I'm going to keep it next time when we come to Turkey. I'm going to share it. Now, okay. They told me that we are going to share this present. So I'm going to take pictures and send to you. All right?
Thank you.
I accept on behalf of you. Thank you very much. Arkadaşlar çok teşekkür ederiz. Teknolojik kesintiden dolayı tekrar özür dileriz. Allah'a emanet görüşürüz. Hadi geçmiş olsun. Söyle mi?
Hey. Ah.
Demiş abi. Yani bana bağlı şeyler çok şükür. Şimdi o başka bir yere evet, onu kapatacağız. Tamam.
Artık şarkını söyleyeyim. Ne yapıyoruz ya? Şimdi 20 ne kadar? 4-5 dakika sabit oldu. Tamam. Tamam canım. Ben biraz sarkabilirim. Dedim onlara. Yok yok. İlk şey yapısını attığım linkten bağlı. Tahmin ettim. Tahmin ettim de şey yaptım. Veririm diye. Allah alışmıştır bunlar. Ve ben ne yapacağım tek başıma? Sen tek başıma keşke ben de uzaktan bağlansaydım. Ama siz burada dinleyelim. Yok ya bak yapılmıyor. Ama ben şey yapıyorum. Sonuçta oradaki bağlantıda bir şey olmasın. Hani orada 5'inin birden, 5'inin birden görünmesi. Yeterli. Ben buradan şey yapacağım. Çok şey değil mi? Sıkılırsın orada yani. Evet, fazladan sonra. Orada çuvallarım yani. Hayırdır, nasıl ya? Hocam, bir şey olmadı kardeşim. Bir süre sonra oldu.
Selim nerede?
Tamam, geldim. Değil mi?
Geldim. 13. oturum başlatmak üzere Japonya Nagoya Üniversitesi'nden Dr. Christian Samet Otika. Beyefendiyi bağlayabildik mi? Kendini biraz. Dr. Christian.
Yes. Okay. Can you hear me? Okay, thank you very much. So I think I may start my talk now, and I think I have. Okay, so thank you very much for inviting me. My name is Christian Ochia from Nagoya University, and today I'll be talking about a state of global manufacturing, basically discussing more the risk of deindustrialization in developing world. And this talk is based on our book, which is coming very soon. So I think you guys probably you can check it out, and I will discuss some of the main chapter of this book today. So if you have questions or you have any comments, I think you can always follow up maybe after the presentation. So today I will discuss about 4 points. The first one is just an introduction about the state of global manufacturing and discussing more about the changes over the last 40 years in terms of global manufacturing. I will discuss in the second time a little bit about premature deindustrialization, and I want to talk about the servicification and the possibility of reindustrialization, because I think the talk has been a lot about deindustrialization, but what we came to understand is that some countries are sort of trying to industrialize after deindustrializing. So I think I want to bring about that discussion in today's meeting. Now, as an introduction, I think there are at least two global events in the last years. The first one, can you see my screen? I think my screen may not appear. So let me go back and try to share the screen.
Okay, if you are ready, we can start. Dr. Christian?
Yes, I just want to go back and share my screen. Sorry,
okay.
just
we can
okay.
start. Okay.
Okay, so I think now it's working probably. So what I wanted to talk about is maybe I may come back later, but there are two main changes in this in the literature. So the first one is that there is a rapid integration of many countries into global value chain, which means that poor countries are entering in the value chain recently. And the other important development in the global economy is that there is a sort of what we call rapid automation. So many the internet is really going everywhere, so people can have easily access to internet. So therefore, what is happening is that because of those changes, we're trying to see that many countries which have been industrializing very slowly, they start to de-industrialize. So there is this big discussion of countries sort of de-industrializing, which means that the share of their manufacturing in the total GDP start to decrease before it reaches a peak, which actually has been documented a lot in the literature. Now, the other discussion, I think, which is very important, is that while there are some countries which start de-industrializing, we have this emergence of new manufacturer. And if you think about the new manufacturer, probably you have China, of course, who is leading. But I think there are many other countries which sort of, they get to industrialize. And the other important feature we can learn is that there is this sort of industry without smokestack. So which means that there is the growth of many, services which tend to have what we call similar characteristics as as industry. So for example, if you look at the Philippines, now the Philippines has been sort of having a lot of service-related sector like call centers, which are employing a lot of people. If you look at Ethiopia, for example, Ethiopia has been also growing the cut flour, which seems to be a service, but with a lot of characteristics as a manufacturing industry. Now, the important discussion is that if you follow this trend, I think what we know is that in terms of stylized fact, what is important is that over the last years, we're trying to see a great heterogeneity across time and regions in terms of manufacturing growth. So what is happening is that if you look, for example, at sub-Saharan Africa on this graph, the left chart, what we see is that between 1990s to 2010, Africa, in terms of manufacturing, the growth has not been that much strong. If you compare, for example, to Europe and Central Asia, and I think Turkey is doing good in terms of that. If you compare to East Asia and Pacific, you're going to see a strong manufacturing growth over the last 20 years. But you see a lot of heterogeneity if you compare, for example, even with North America or South Asia. So which means that given the global, the new initial conditions, we have, of course, China, but many East Asian countries have been actually industrializing very fast, especially over the last 10 years. Now, if you want to see the heterogeneity, probably this graph gives you a very nice picture. And this is in terms of manufacturing exports as a ratio of manufacturing value added. And it's very nice to see, for example, that Latin America has been actually exporting a lot. And if you remember, Latin America starts, building a lot of industrial park early 1995. I think from early 2000, they build a lot of park. And I think that may have a strong link with this manufacturing exports growth. And if you see, Europe and Central Asia is doing good, but Africa has been actually slowing down in terms of manufacturing exports. So what I really want you to remember with these two graphs is that we're trying to see a lot of heterogeneity in manufacturing growth, either in terms of manufacturing production, but also in terms of exports. Now, what that heterogeneity means, it means that when there is an heterogeneity, probably you have some kind of clubs which have been creating. And we can see that there are basically two clubs. The first one has been dominated by G7, which has had a long contribution of manufacturing share over the time. But what we see is, if you look at the share of manufacturing, the contribution of G7 has been decreasing, while there are three risers, which I call Republic of Korea, India, and Indonesia. And if you see those countries, they have been increasing their share of manufacturing in the global economy. You can add other countries which have also been doing good in terms of manufacturing, and you will see there is a sort of a convergence between this old group and the new group. And of course, China itself is also taking over. So which means that China, as what we call the Asia factory, is actually taking by itself a lot of manufacturing production, even especially in terms of value added. Now, the story is that if China and the other riser are growing very fast, what is happening to the rest of the country? And I think the discussion in terms of convergence is very important, because what we see here is that if you compare, for example, between 1990 to 2017, you will see that late industrializer were trying to catch up at a very faster pace relative to early industrializer. So which means that, late comer are growing a little bit fast, while, early industrializer, their growth is very slow. And that growth actually of late industrializer has been increasing over the last year. So we're trying to see a more convergence in terms of manufacturing growth, with many countries trying to increase their share of manufacturing production into global manufacturing. However, most of those latecomers are sort of involved in producing labor-intensive manufacturing. So if you look at the panel A, which shows you the share of manufacturing in total employment, what you see here is that upper middle income has been keeping their share of manufacturing employments in total employment, while the high income share of manufacturing employment has been decreasing into total employment. And that is because, of course, of automation and robotics, which are increasing productivity in the manufacturing sector, releasing worker to go to service sector, which seems to be also technology intensive to some extent. And the low middle income country, the share in total employment has been increasing. And if you look in terms of the index, you see in the panel B that the low income countries share in terms of job has been also flat over the time, but that of lower middle income country is growing faster. So we have this small group among low middle income countries which are increasing their employment in the manufacturing employment as in terms of every total employment. Now, what will be interesting to understand at the end is that this is the story. Now, we have a heterogeneity in growth, we have a concentration in manufacturing production, but we have many late industrializer or lower middle income country trying to focus or produce a lot of labor-intensive manufacturing products.
So can you hear me? So can you hear me?
Happening to the production of middle and high-tech manufacture is that it's concentrating more into high-income countries. So what we see as a pattern here is that lower middle income countries are focusing on labor intensive countries, labor intensive manufacturing, and high income countries tend to focus on medium and high tech manufacturing. So I think this is the sort of what I wanted to highlight as a state of global manufacturing over the last 30 and 40 years. Now, the story is if we see those patterns.
Sir, can you hear me?
Sorry?
Yeah, if you could speed up a little bit, sir, because we have a few minutes left.
Okay, no problem. So if you think about, thank you very much. I will just go quickly. If you think about those change in manufacturing, what happened to deindustrialization? And I think Danny Roderick has done a lot of work in this area of deindustrialization. So probably I think I will skip this because of time and move to the last section. So what I really want to emphasize here is that if you look at the pattern of structural change and deindustrialization, most of the developed countries follow a similar path. And what we're trying to see in South Asia, for example, is that most of the countries have succeeded the agriculture transformation and the industrial transformation, and they're moving, I think, to the service sector. But Latin America, we can see a lot of evidence of industrialization. And in Africa, I think my take on this is that probably Africa has not started the agricultural transformation. So basically, Africa should probably focus on agricultural transformation instead of moving quickly to the service sector. Now, let me finish my talk with a discussion on service sector, because I think it's becoming very important to understand the role of service sector, and we see the importance of the service sector over time. So if you look at the contribution of service sector, you see that most of the countries are relying more and more on the service sector. However, there is a concentration of low-income countries in terms of commodity, in terms of GVC. So meaning that those countries who are focusing on commodity have less likelihood to industrialize. And the effect, especially on manufacturing, is bigger when a country moves from commodity value chains to a more innovative or advanced kind of manufacturing and services. Now, what are the policy implications? And one of the policy implications is just to look at those special economic zones, because we're trying to see a positive relation between the development of those special economic zone and growth in manufacturing value added, and to some extent growth in manufacturing exports. So therefore, many countries in Africa, for example, in Asia, have been trying to promote those SEZ, because we see even a sort of a positive correlation with employment growth. Now, my final question, probably a takeaway, is given this COVID. So probably one question we could ask is if there is any policy space for developing countries to find a niche for manufacturing activities. And in the last minutes, I can say that many African countries, after being hit by the COVID crisis, have started to sort of produce a lot of manufacturing product. And I think if you look at the case of Ethiopia, for example, in the industrial park, which were producing garment product, most of those parks start to producing like shelter, they start producing medical equipment. So I think most of those parks has helped workers to accumulate skills that they can translate into producing different types of activity. And I think the COVID may be an opportunity for many African countries to embark in this industrialization process. So I think because of time, I will stop here. So maybe I can take some questions if there are.
Okay. Thank you for your participation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, maybe I didn't show this slide. I just wanted to sort of advertise our upcoming book. And I think Dr. Ali also has contributed to this book. And my talk has been based on one of the chapters in this book. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you. 13. oturumumuz tamamlandı. Evet, 13. oturumumuz tamamlandı. 14. oturumumuzu başlatmak üzere Marmara Üniversitesi'nden Profesör Doktor Mustafa Erdoğan'a bağlanıyoruz. Hocam, duyuyor musunuz sesimizi?
Test mi yapıyor hocam? Test. Sorun isterseniz şey yap.
Mustafa Hocam, sesimiz geliyor mu?
Bir de
14. oturumu başlatmak üzere Marmara Üniversitesi'nden Profesör Doktor Mustafa Erdoğan'a bağlanıyoruz. Hocam, sesim geliyor mu?
bir daha sorar mısınız hocam?
Mustafa Hocam, sesimiz geliyor mu? Mustafa Hocam.
Aynı zamanda telefonla arıyor Egehan hocam. Telefonla da Egehan arıyor. Bilmiyorum ki. Alo. Zannedersin kendisinden. Sonra gene mikrofonu buraya mı koyacağız acaba yoksa bakarız duruma.
14. oturumu başlatmak üzere Marmara Üniversitesi'nden Profesör Doktor Mustafa Erdoğan hocamıza bağlanıyoruz. Hocam, sesiniz geliyor mu?
Biraz buraya yakın konuşsanız nasıl olur?
Hocam, sesim geliyor mu? Onun hoparlörü kapalı. Hocam, hoparlörünüz kapalı. Sesim geliyor mu?
Kapalı galiba.
Sizin hoparlörünüz kapalı galiba hocam. Sesim geliyor mu? Mustafa hocam, sesim geliyor mu?
Efendim?
Hocam, Mustafa hocam, sesim geliyor mu size?
Şu
Evet.
an duyuyoruz. Tamam.
14. oturumu başlatmak üzere Marmara Üniversitesi'nden Profesör Doktor Mustafa Erdoğan'a bağlanıyoruz. Buyurun hocam. Söz sizde.
Sesim duyuluyor mu acaba?
Evet, geliyor şu anda. Çok net diyemeyeceğim ama duyuluyor. Evet, oturumu başlatabiliriz hocam.
Yalnız PowerPoint'in sesini aktarmak istiyorum.
Hiç oraya koy.
O geldi mi acaba?
Ekran paylaşımı yapın lütfen.
Yaptım, evet.
Şu an burada yansımadı hocam. Share screen yazıyor, gördünüz mü? Bir saat.
Efendim?
Sağ. Onun ekranı mı, bizim ekranımız?
Onun ekranında. Kendi
Hocam, şu an mouse tutumunuzun hemen bir sağında. Share screen diye yazıyor. Share screen.
Aşağı kısımda değil mi?
Evet, aşağıda.
Yok, o bizim de ekranımız değil ama kendi ekranın üzerinde.
Onu tıkladım yalnız ben.
Kendi ekranınızın üzerinde oluyor olması lazım.
Efendim?
Kendi ekranınızda alt tarafta Share Screen diye bir ekran paylaşımı butonu var. Oraya basar mısınız hocam?
Ben ona bastım. Şu an aktif olması gerekir.
Evet ama henüz olmadı. Evet, demin paylaşmıştınız, görmüştük
Az
yani.
önce ekran paylaşımı yaptığınızda buraya yansımış hocam. Şu anda gözükmüyor.
Şu an yansımıyor mu?
3-4 dakika
Şu anda gözükmüyor.
Bir saniye tekrar deneyeceğim.
Tamam hocam.
Yalnız şu anda share screen kısmı aktif görünmüyor.
Ekranda.
Bir saniye. Şimdi oldu mu?
Bir dakika hocam. Levent hocam geliyor mu? Tekrar bir daha paylaşa basar mısınız üstüne?
Şu an paylaşma şeyi aktif değil. Butonu aktif değil.
Buton aktif değilmiş. Ekranı
Şu an
seçin.
ekranı görüyor musunuz?
Karşınıza ekran çıkacak. O ekranı da seçmeniz gerekiyor. Ondan sonra. Ekranı seçin. Ondan sonra paylaştığımız aktif olarak ekrana yansıyacak.
Bir saniye tekrar iptal edip deneyeceğim. Evet. Şu an görüyor musunuz?
Şu an bunu indirebilir misiniz? Paylaşmak istedikleriniz. Siz de hocam paylaşmak istediğiniz formu önce seçip ekrana paylaşmanız gerekiyor. Şu anda ekranda gözükmüyor. Şimdi indirebilir misiniz?
Sizin oradan yansıtabilme şansınız var mı acaba? Çünkü burada denedik.
Egen hocam. Sunum gönderdik hocam. Biz buradan isterseniz deneyelim hocam.
Lütfen. Orada tek tek slaytları oynatmak gerekecek sesli olarak.
Tamam. Mustafa Erdoğan. Buyurun biz buradan aşağıdan haber vereceğim. Hocam tekrar yükleyince ama böyle hocam. Tamam biraz tamam ama şu an yayında problem var. Kamerada.
Yani Hanım, her slaytın tek tek ayrı ayrı seslendirildiği, tek tek geçirilmesi gerekiyor slaytların.
Aşk hocam. Hazır. Evet.
Başladım. 14. oturumu başlatmak üzere Marmara Üniversitesi'nden Profesör Doktor Mustafa Erdoğan hocamıza bağlanıyoruz. Hocam sesim geliyor mu?
Evet, geliyor. Siz duyabiliyor musunuz? Ben sesinizi aldım. Siz beni duyabiliyor musunuz acaba?
Evet. Hocam tekrar konuşur musunuz?
Ben sizi duyabiliyorum. Siz beni şu an duyabiliyor musunuz?
Evet, şu an sesiniz geliyor hocam. Başlayabilirsiniz hocam. Evet. 15 dakikamız var ama.
Ben PowerPoint'te sesli olarak yaptım. Sadece onu oynatırsanız, sesini duymuyorum yalnız. Sesini de açarsanız.
PowerPoint sesliymiş. Tamam.
Zaten biz yansıtıyoruz ya. Buradan öyle bir şey var mı?
Evet, şu anda açık hocam.
Tamam, lütfen başlatın.
Siz görebiliyor musunuz?
Ben görebiliyorum.
Tamam.
Effect on the people and the The viral pandemic COVID-19 is an unprecedented global health crisis in living memory. According to OECD Economic Outlook for September 2020, it is historically, there is a growing consensus that most developing countries, including the United Kingdom, United States, Germany, and France, have intervened actively in their domestic economy through industrial policies. More recently, the rapid growth of East Asian economies has also been associated with active industrial policies that selectively promoted manufacturing and facilitated technology transfer and industrial upgrading. Historically, there is a growing consensus that most developing countries, including the United Kingdom, United States, Germany, and France, have intervened actively in their domestic economy through industrial policies. More recently, the rapid growth of East Asian economies has also been associated with active industrial policies that selectively promoted manufacturing and facilitated technology transfer and industrial upgrading. The main criticism against industrial policy arises from the concept of government failure. Industrial policy is seen as harmful as governments lack the required information, capabilities, and incentives to successfully determine whether the benefits of promoting certain sectors above others exceeds the cost and in turn implement the policies. Governments, in making decisions with regard to electoral or personal incentives, can be captured by vested interests, leading to industrial policies supporting local rent-seeking political elites while distorting the efficient allocation of resources by market forces. Although there is some merit in these criticisms, successful cases, particularly in East Asia, prove that it is possible to block rent-seeking and increase positive outcomes for the society at large. In the years following World War II, economies in all areas of the world had been governed by state-centered regulatory regimes. In the early 1970s, the supply-side approach to economics emerged as if the best solution to the stagflation that started after the oil crisis. Supply-side economics proposed monetary policy as the main tool for influencing economic events. Consequently, the established opinion took the view that the best formula was the unrestricted free market, a limited role of the state, and integration into the world economy. This formula has come to be known as the Washington Consensus, through which many economies abolished virtually all restrictions on cross-border capital flows. After the demise of the adjustable exchange rate pegs of Bretton Woods in the early 1970s, neoliberalism dominated policymaking in the West and spread around the world after the Cold War. The key principles associated with neoliberal economic policies have been trade liberalization, privatization, and financial deregulation. In the final 3 decades of the 20th century, countries have shifted away from industrial capitalism to neoliberalism. The core of neoliberalism has been a strong belief in unfettered free markets to ensure sustained economic growth, which in turn would trickle down and improve the welfare of wide segments of society. Under neoliberalism, publicly owned enterprises privatized, capital controls lifted, and markets deregulated. The end result was that a large number of countries locked up in the middle income trap. History showed us that neoliberal claims couldn't pass the test of time and been denied many times. Neoliberal policies implemented after the debt crisis of the early 1980s in Latin America led to economic stagnation and a lost decade. Sub-Saharan Africa lost a quarter century because of neoliberal policies. Several key emerging economies experienced subsequent shocks due to the unrestricted short-term capital flows. A major crisis occurred almost every year in one of the economies. As a result, the single-minded neoliberal paradigm has been seriously questioned. Particularly since the 1990s, there has been widespread disillusion with the experience of neoliberal policies. Many countries were trapped in low-wage economies. What needs to be recognized is that without new industries, countries cannot achieve robust economic growth and escape the middle-income trap. Economic growth is supposed to be the tide that lifts all boats. However, as the last World Bank chief economist, Goldberg, recently observed, there are plenty of examples, especially in African countries, where wealth is concentrated in the hands of a few. Even when the tide rises, only very few boats rise. Growth doesn't trickle down and doesn't improve the lot of the poor. The financial crisis of 2007 and 2008 demonstrated that financial markets tend to fail. It also made it clear that the opening of capital accounts was not good for developing countries. Indeed, international financial liberalization has enabled further capital outflows from most developing countries, depriving them all the resources essential to the development of their economies. There was false confidence in the power of free markets to regulate themselves and create prosperity for all. As a result, the last decade has been marked by a series of broad-based economic crises and negative shocks, starting with the global financial crisis of 2008 and 2009. The global financial crisis of 2008 and the ensuing Great Recession may have shaken neoliberalism supremacy, but it remains unchallenged by serious alternatives. After the Great Recession, many countries around the world, including the US, the UK, Australia, Japan, and most of the European Union, adopted industrial policies. Current industrial policy, however, generally takes globalization for granted and focuses less on the decline of older industries and more on the growth of emerging industries. What COVID-19 has revealed is that there are huge holes in many countries' public health infrastructures, including advanced countries like the US. It is also obvious that lockdowns because of COVID-19 will disproportionately hurt low-income households, casual workers, and the poor, especially where social protection is grossly inadequate. Boisal and Adams make the important point that most of the problems that we have witnessed during this pandemic are not caused by COVID-19 itself, but by dysfunctional political and social systems built on the foundation of neoliberal corporate capitalism. The arrival of COVID-19 only magnified pre-existing vulnerabilities and exposed the toxic effects of a system that has for far too long dominated every aspect of our societies. While mainly neoliberal the West fumbled, some less than neoliberal East Asian governments like China, South Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, Vietnam, and Kerala could receive appraisals from WHO for their COVID-19 responses. China, for instance, is expected to be the only country with positive growth. South Korea will shrink mildly with 1%. Despite the criticisms, there is a consensus in recent development theory that government intervention may be required in the event of market failure. Market failure can hamper the emergence of well-functioning market, and corrective industrial policies are needed to ensure the efficient allocation of a free market. Even relatively skeptical economists are now realizing that public policies can promote certain factors of development beyond what market forces alone could generate. While the current debate has moved away from rejecting industrial policy as a whole, the best ways to promote industrial policy are still widely debated. What I can add is that without new industries, countries cannot achieve robust economic growth and escape the middle income trap. To conclude, the government of a middle-income country needs to prioritize the use of its limited resources to facilitate technological innovation and industrial upgrading. This is done by industrial policy. The Great Recession of 2008 and 2009 had shown how deep the shortcomings of individualistic market fundamentalism or neoliberalism are. Additionally, the COVID-19 pandemic has revealed that neoliberalism is unlikely to produce socially desirable results. The experience of some countries such as South Korea and China have shown that the pace of industrial transformation can be accelerated through targeted industrial policy. The Korean and Chinese states actively promoted certain industries with potential long-term comparative advantage beyond the infant phase and gradually exposed them to international competition. In this environment, lumpy and long-term investment projects have been undertaken, which would probably not have been undertaken in an economy with free trade and capital movements. Thank you all for your attention.
14. oturumumuz Marmara Üniversitesi'nden Profesör Doktor Mustafa Erdoğan hocamızın bilgilerinin aktarımıyla gerçekleştirilmektedir. Hocam teşekkür ediyoruz.
Ben teşekkür ederim.
Çok
If
sağ
there
olun.
if there is any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you. Teşekkürler hocam. Evet. 15. panel oturumu için akıllı kalkınma modeli olarak kümelenmeler, molası geçmiş mi yoksa bir klasik mi diyoruz? Moderatörümüz Gülnaz Karolkonoğlu'nu OSTİM Vakfı Müdürü sahneye davet ediyorum. Evet. Bu panelimizde Haliç Üniversitesi Rektörü Profesör Doktor Melih Bulu, Düzce Üniversitesi'nden Profesör Doktor İsmail Hakkı Eraslan, TSKB Sürdürülebilir Danışmanlık CEO'su Doktor Kubilay Kavak, YASET Genel Sekreteri Serkan Balandova, Ankara Üniversitesi'nden Doçent Doktor Nuri Yavan hocalarımız bulunmaktadır.